Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How we doing? Spectre here for another edition of Midnight Rider. Good to have you aboard this evening. This now the 4th day of February, just about to cross into the 5th here. Tonight on the broadcast, what are we going to cover? A couple things. Adam Kinzinger getting censured by his home district, GOP, and shunning by family and friends here recently. Follow up on some of Biden's executive decrees. And of course, DJT citing on Gab here today. Is it official? Can't say for certain. And of course, we're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming Shampeachment. So stick around. We'll see you back here momentarily. Public Law 112-239, January 2nd, 2013, 126 Stat 1957. The General Authorization, Section 501A. The Secretary and the Broadcasting Board of Governors are authorized to use funds appropriated or otherwise made available for public diplomacy, information programs to provide for the preparation, dissemination, and use of information intended for foreign audiences abroad about the United States, its people, and its policies through press, publications, radio, motion pictures, the Internet, and other information media, including social media, and through information centers, instructors, and other direct or indirect means of communication. Section 208, Clarification on Domestic Distribution of Program Material. Section B, Rule of Construction. Nothing in this section shall be construed to prohibit the Department of State or the Broadcasting Board of Governors from engaging in any medium or form of communication, either directly or indirectly, because a United States domestic audience is or may be thereby exposed to program material, or based on a presumption of such exposure. Such material may be made available within the United States and disseminated, when appropriate, pursuant to Sections 502 and 1005 of the United States Information and Educational Exchange Act of 1948, 22 U.S.C. 1462 and 1437, except that nothing in this section may be construed to authorize the Department of State or the Broadcasting Board of Governors to disseminate within the United States any program material prepared for dissemination abroad on or before the effective date of Section 1078 of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2013. Welcome to the NDAA 2013. The groundwork is being laid. Flash forward to July 2013. Out of foreign policy, the U.S. repeals propaganda ban, spreads government-made news to Americans. For decades, a so-called anti-propaganda law prevented the U.S. government's mammoth broadcasting arm from delivering programming to American audiences, which of course led into House Resolution 5736, otherwise known as the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act of 2012, which legalized propaganda to be broadcast here within these United States, and signed into law by 44. December 2016, out of Zero Hedge, Obama quietly signs the Countering Disinformation and Propaganda Act into law. Our enemies are using foreign propaganda and disinformation against us and our allies, and so far the U.S. government has been asleep at the wheel. But today, with this bill, now law, we are finally signaling that enough is enough. And within that article, we get to find out about the NDAA of 2017 underneath Senate Bill 2943. In conjunction, we find out about House Resolution 5181, otherwise known as the Countering Foreign Propaganda and Disinformation Act of 2016, also brought up in the Senate under 2692, called the Countering Information Warfare Act of 2016. All brought to us by the combination of the Portman-Murphy. The bill promotes the coordinated strategy to defend America, allies against propaganda and disinformation from Russia and China and others. And just like that, the U.S. Ministry of Truth is officially born. Well, not to be outdone, we gotta get big tech involved, right? Flash forward into September 2017. Why is Google hiring thousands of journalists to flood newsrooms around America? Well, I think we know the answer to that. It's a rhetorical question. And of course, Facebook to invest $300 million to help local news survive. All of that leading into the Communications Decency Act, otherwise known as Section 47 U.S. Code Section 230, protection for private blocking and screening of offensive material. A lot in the news about that here lately, and whether or not big tech can actually hide behind that, right? Flash forward into September 2019, out of Breitbart, Facebook, in court filings, defending itself from a lawsuit filed by activist and congressional candidate Laura Loomer, has cited its First Amendment right as a publisher, contradicting public claims by the company that it's a social media service is a platform. Whoops. And of course, not to be outdone, Judicial Watch has this. Most of Facebook has ties to left-wing billionaire George Soros. It's time to wake up, America. Our First Amendment is, has, and continues to be under assault. Realize, realize, realize. This has been a PSA by Breaking Spectre. Alright, welcome back everybody. A little bit of a long opener, but a fitting opener considering what we're going to get into this evening. And if you paid attention throughout the PSA, any of the legislation and that came through, you'll quickly realize that the first topic this evening on old Kinzinger, well, guess what? He was one of the sponsors of that legislation that brought us the nice handy-dandy propaganda, the misinformation and disinformation that is now legal on these United States across the land. So that is exactly what we're going to get into. If you're joining tonight on YouTube, appreciate you guys tuning in. On Twitch, over on DLive, we're up, as well as over on the Tiger Network. Appreciate you guys tuning in. And by the way, before I get into things here tonight, I want to make sure that you guys get out and like, share, subscribe across all platforms. The reason I say that, obviously, is that this is the age of censorship. You never know when we're going to acquire strikes and things of that nature by the powers that be behind the scenes because, you know, we speak a little bit too much truth for their liking. So if one goes down, we have plenty of backup platforms and so forth to go to. So there you go. All right, like I said, let's just get right into it here this evening. Starting off with old Adam Kinzinger. This dates back a couple days out of Gateway Pundit. Says top Winnebago County Republican calls for GOP to censor Trump-hating Rep. Adam Kinzinger rally set for Saturday. And that did indeed happen. Says Rep. Kinzinger is a vocal Trump hater. Earlier this month, Kinzinger and 9 other Republicans voted to impeach President Trump. The Republican voters in Illinois have finally had enough. One member of the Republican Executive Committee in Winnebago County is calling for a censure of Rep. Kinzinger. And mind you, if you've been paying attention, he's not the only one. There have been plenty around the country who have been censored, including Liz Cheney. And there is a rally scheduled for Saturday, which was this past Saturday, against the Trump-hating Republican. Says the LaSalle County Republican Central Committee presents a rally for representation. Democracy begins with representation. It fails without it. 16th Congressional District and friends, this is Let Rep. Kinzinger Know Your Thoughts. This was to have taken place on the 30th, Washington Park, Ottawa. There you see that from the LaSalleCountyRepublicans.org. And like I said, that did indeed take place. The Rockford Register-Star reported a Winnebago County lawyer and member of the Executive Committee of the Winnebago County Republican Central Committee is asking the local GOP to denounce U.S. Rep. Adam Kinzinger. Austin Scott Davies, who runs Midwest Legal Care in Rockford, plans to ask his fellow Republicans to censure and disavow Kinzinger at the Executive Committee's next meeting, February 9th. says in a draft resolution he shared with party leaders earlier this week, Davies states Kinzinger's actions and statements regarding the results of the 2020 presidential election, the January 6th attack on Capitol Hill, and impeachment of former President Donald Trump are not in line with the party beliefs and values of local Republicans. And not to be outdone, there was more to that out of just the news the other day, says Congressman Adam Kinzinger, who voted for impeachment, starts anti-Trump Republican PAC. Oh yeah, so these guys and their arrogance and their pride and their hubris, of all things, because they are on the quote-unquote winning side of history, oh yeah, not to be outdone, they're going to just form some PACs. So the PAC's goal will be to reject the Republican Party's embrace of Trump. Well, unfortunately, Mr. Kinzinger, what you fail to realize is your party is toast. Nonetheless, GOP Rep. Adam Kinzinger, who voted to impeach former President Trump, is now starting an anti-Trump PAC to fight against the former president's influence over the party. The Illinois lawmaker and military vet announced the formation of the PAC Country First on Sunday on NBC's Meet the Press. And wouldn't you know, of course, they have to kowtow to the Mockingbird media because, frankly, they're all one and the same. Says my goal in launching CountryFirst.com is just to say, look, let's take a look at the last 4 years, how far we have come in a bad way, how backward-looking we are, how much we peddle darkness and division, he said. I don't know what sort of alternate reality he lives in, but apparently, no, Mr. Kinzinger, you are the backwardation. Kinzinger also described fellow GOP House member Reps. Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia and Jim Jordan of Ohio as political terrorists within the conference. The newly elected Taylor is under intense bipartisan scrutiny for comments and actions related to violence and other incendiary rhetoric, including that related to the QAnon conspiracy theory group and past remarks using Islamophobic and anti-Semitic language. Jordan has been one of Trump's strong and most outspoken Capitol Hill supporters. Kinzinger was elected to the House in the 2010 Tea Party wave, an anti-tax movement that held the GOP win control of the chamber. Let's take a look at the last 4 years, how far we have come in a bad way, how backwards looking we are, how much we peddle darkness and division. He also said Sunday, that's not the party I ever signed up for. And I think most Republicans didn't sign up for that. We don't embrace conspiracy theories to win anymore. Would we lose the Proud Boys? Maybe. I'm fine with that. And there we see his video. It's not worthy to be played at this point. The bottom line, this is the culmination of what happened after Saturday. We get the letter out of the LaSalle County Republican. Says for immediate release, contact Larry Smith, Northville 6 Repub at AOL. Tuesday, February 2nd, 2021, the LaSalle County Republican Central Committee voted overwhelmingly to censure Illinois 16th U.S. Congressional District Representative Adam Kinzinger out of Channahon at its regular monthly meeting at Pittstick Pavilion in Ottawa, Illinois. All precinct committeemen were given the opportunity to speak for 2 minutes explaining their support or opposition to the censure. Two issues echoed repeatedly, where the Rep. Kinzinger has not met with the LaSalle County Republican Central Committee in over 6 years. 6 years! And he was one of 10 Republican U.S. representatives to call for the impeachment of President Trump. The censure disavows Rep. Kinzinger for acting contrary to the values of the LaSalle County Republican Central Committee. The resolution overwhelmingly passed with 88% of the precinct committeemen voting yes to censure. The LaSalle County Republican Central Committee has received unsolicited support for the censure from over 40 county Republican Central Committees around the state of Illinois. Chairman Larry Smith noted the LaSalle County Republicans have received hundreds upon hundreds of emails, text messages, and phone calls from our county and beyond, expressing their frustration and a lot more with Congressman Kinzinger's actions and statements the past few months. Many have been very direct that their support for the Republican Party is over if Congressman Kinzinger's behavior isn't addressed. Though our Central Committee is not noted for political activism, and we have always supported Republicans at every level, Congressman Kinzinger's actions and statements against former President Trump have opened a Pandora's box of criticism. And there you can see where you can address questions, and they're absolutely right for doing so at this point, as have many of the GOP folks and that around the country, and censoring their representatives, or lack thereof. 6 years. These people live inside the Beltway bubble. They have no idea what the hell is going on in their districts. And so, of course, today I put this gab out. And, of course, it goes right in line with what just happened with Marjorie Taylor Greene here today. Says, if it was all just a lie, if it was all just a conspiracy, if it was all for a LARP, why are they so united in their front against it? What are they afraid of? The tired old playbook persists. And there you see down below here all of the various articles and that from the Mockingbird media types and that around the web-osphere today on all the QAnon stuff that they have pinned on Marjorie Taylor Greene. And of course, if you remember right, when she ran down in Georgia, she disavowed and everything else, trying to distance herself from it, but it doesn't matter to them. They had already labeled her. So nonetheless, today she was indeed stripped of her committees, and off we go. In any case, switching things up a little bit, let's get into Presidente Biden, or Dictator Biden, whatever you want to call him, Fraud Biden, whatever. We get this. Last week we were talking about how many executive orders he kicked out in rapid fashion. So this dates back to the 26th now. President Executive Order. Biden has signed a record 33 in 1 week. He signed more than 3 times as many orders as the previous 4 presidents combined. And this out of Paul Joseph Watson's Summit News last week. Says Joe Biden has signed a record 33 executive orders in just 1 week, a record for any president, and most of them directly reversing President Trump's core policies. Despite the apparent fact that Biden doesn't even know what he's signing, he has issued 33 executive orders, actions, proclamations, memoranda, and agency directives, as the Clown News reports. Thus far, Biden has signed more than 3 times as many orders as the previous 4 presidents combined. In their first weeks, Trump signed 4, Obama signed 5, George W. Bush signed none, and Bill Clinton signed 1. Indeed, no other president has ever signed as many orders as Biden, according to the American Presidency Project at the University of California, Santa Barbara. The executive order is and always has been controversial because it is essentially a decree. But whatever, the empire has fallen and it's time to undo all of its evil deeds. So what are they? Biden doesn't know. But MarketWatch published a complete table. Favorites include overturning Trump's order to exclude undocumented immigrants from the census, ending Trump's 1776 initiative, stopping construction of the border wall, fortifying DACA, ending harsh immigration enforcement, and quote-unquote restoring U.S. global leadership. America Last is back. And so here we see at the time, many of those that were issued on the 20th, whether they were decrees, executive orders, sign an instrument, requests, memoranda, etc., all the way through, and what he has signed since the 20th now. That being said, we carry that forward into the article here. It says Dictator Biden signs 2 executive orders to restore Obama's failed Affordable Care Act, refuses to answer questions from reporters. So, just more of the same. Has no idea what he's signing, and of course there's been even some questions as to whether or not it's even his real signature on there in recent days. Dictator Biden signed 2 executive orders on Thursday restoring Obama's highly unpopular Affordable Care Act, health care that no one can afford. Shortly after signing the EOs, Biden's handlers shooed away reporters. Can't be disturbed with a little petty reporters now, can we? No one is allowed to question Joe Biden. Biden has signed dozens of executive orders in his first week in office, and the media cheers him on. Today, I'm about to sign 2 executive orders, basically, the best way to describe it, to undo the damage Trump has done. There's nothing new that we're doing here other than restoring the Affordable Care Act, said Biden. Biden's executive orders will reopen enrollment on the ACA exchange between February 15th and May 15th. Biden's EO will also conduct a robust outreach effort to shove ACA down people's throats, which will include paid advertising and other partnerships with local community organizations. President Trump got rid of the oppressive individual mandate in his 2017 tax bill, but Joe Biden will bring back the penalty for not having health insurance through a series of executive orders and his quote-unquote long-standing history of getting stuff done in Congress to get legislation to build on the Affordable Care Act. Barack Obama is behind all of Biden's executive orders. Biden is merely signing the orders handed down by Obama and his Marxist goons. So we'll let this briefly play through.
Getting COVID relief passed will require you to break it up into chunks, Mr. President.
No one requires me to do anything.
Thank you. President, when are we speaking with the Brazilian president?
Thank you,
Mr.
guys.
President.
Let's go. Thank you.
When are we speaking with
Thank you,
Bolsonaro?
guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Let's go. Thank you. Come on. Let's go. Let's go. Come on. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Ridiculous. Not even worth playing all the way through. It's the Mockingbird media for you. What do you expect? Cheer them on. That's exactly the case. Remember when Joe Biden said legislating by executive order meant one was a dictator?
Sure.
So there's not going to be any delay on the tax increases.
No, well, I got to get the votes. That's why, the one thing that I have this strange notion. We are a democracy. Some of my Republican friends and some of my Democratic friends even occasionally say, well, if you can't get the votes by executive order, you're going to do something. Things you can't do by executive order unless you're a dictator. We're a democracy. We need consensus.
Got to take a quick break.
Sure.
So there's not.
Yeah, we need to take a quick break, all right? We need to take a break from allowing him to sign more executive decrees and actually legislate things for a change. How about that? Democracy? No, we're not a democracy. We don't rule by executive fiat and mob rule. This is supposed to be a representative constitutional republic where the right of the individual is protected against the mob. And oh, by the way, we have this thing called the legislature who actually writes up the law. The executive is supposed to faithfully execute the law. Get it straight, Joe. But nonetheless, I digress. We get into this. Joe Biden has issued 42 executive actions in 1 week, a practice he recently called dictator behavior. This out of the National Pulse. Says the number of executive orders issued by President Biden in the first week, who once decried the legislative move as undemocratic and used by dictators, is more double the amount of the past 7 presidents combined. It says in just 7 days, President Biden issued 42 executive actions. That's 10 times as many as Donald Trump and over 8 times as many as 44. It is a whopping 22 times greater than Bill Clinton and 42 more than President Reagan and Bush. As the left like to say of Donald Trump, this is not normal. Joe Biden even recognized this on the run-up to the presidential election, calling the unilateral use of executive actions the hallmark of a dictator. Speaking at an October 15, 2020 town hall with ABC's George Stephanopoulos, which we just covered here, skip into this as I have this strange notion. We are a democracy. Some of my Republican friends and some of my Democratic friends even say, well, if you can't get the votes by executive order, you're going to do something. Things you can't do by executive order unless you're a dictator. Or if you remember like what 44 used to say, I got a pen and I got a phone. We're a democracy. We need consensus, the president who's relied on executive orders to pass his agenda added. And there's the same clip. As American University history professor Alan Lichtman said or noted, he's on a record pace, and not by a nose, but by several lengths. And President Biden's pace on issuing executive orders hasn't dipped since the first week, and by the 9th day of his administration, the total has skyrocketed to 40. The topics of the executive orders range from race to immigration to climate change, but share a common goals: to completely erase the legacy of President Trump, even if it means sacrificing the country's national security. So here's a list of Biden's executive actions. Executive order on strengthening Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act, memorandum on protecting women's health at home and abroad, executive order on tackling the climate crisis at home and abroad, executive order on establishing President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology, memorandum on restoring trust in government through scientific integrity and evidence-based policymaking. Seems like that's a bit of a joke. Paris Climate Agreement, the executive order on protecting public health and the environment and restoring science to tackle the climate crisis. Where was that for the last year, by the way? Executive order on advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities through the federal government. And of course, this aligns itself nicely to the 1619 project, doesn't it? Executive order on preventing and combating discrimination on the basis of gender identity or sexual orientation. Memorandum condemning and combating racism, xenophobia, and intolerance against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in the United States. Executive order on reforming our incarceration system to eliminate the use of privately owned criminal detention facilities. A memorandum on redressing our nation's and the federal government's history of discriminatory housing practices and policies. Memorandum on tribal consultation and strengthening nation-to-nation relationships. Executive order on enabling all qualified Americans to serve their country in uniform. Executive order on ensuring the future is made in all of America by all of America's workers, which, by the way, was a plagiarism from Trump. Executive order on protecting the federal workforce, executive order on economic relief related to the COVID-19 pandemic, pausing federal student loan payments, extend eviction and foreclosure moratoriums, proclamation on the suspension of entry as immigrants and non-immigrants of certain additional persons who pose a risk of transmitting coronavirus disease, memorandum to extend federal support to governors' use of National Guard to respond to COVID-19 and to increase reimbursement and other assistance provided to states, executive order on a sustainable public health supply chain, executive order on establishing the COVID-19 Pandemic Testing Board and ensuring a sustainable public health workforce for COVID-19 and other biological threats. And the list goes on. As you can see there, this goes on for a while. Obviously, 30, 40, it's just par for the course for this regime. And so, nonetheless, carrying that tune on, hey, not only is the Mockingbird media cheering them on, but hey, why not add Facebook as well? Facebook Zuckerberg praised Biden's executive orders, according to leaked video. Facebook CEO Zuckerberg praised executive orders issued by President Joe Biden during his first day in office. Newly leaked video from a company meeting shows. I thought President Biden's inaugural address was very good, Zucky said during the January 21st meeting. In his first day, Biden already issued a number of executive orders on areas that we as a company care quite deeply about, and have for some time, he said. Areas like immigration, preserving DACA, ending restrictions on travel from Muslim-majority countries, as well as other executive orders on climate and advancing racial justices and equity. I think these are all important and positive steps. I'm sure you do, Zucky. Says the video was leaked to Project Veritas, a non-profit watchdog, by someone the group described as a Facebook insider. Biden issued a record number of executive orders in his first days in office as he sought to reverse actions taken by former President Donald Trump. One ordered the Department of Homeland Security to preserve and fortify the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA, program. The group also leaked a clip of Zuckerberg disparaging Trump at a January 7th meeting. It's so important that our political leaders lead by example, make sure we put the nation first here, and what we've seen is that the president has been doing the opposite of that, Zuckerberg said at the time. The president intends to use his remaining time in office to undermine the peaceful and lawful transition of power, which, by the way, was totally bogus and contrived. His decision to use his platform to condone rather than condemn the actions of his supporters in the Capitol I think, has rightly bothered and disturbed people in the U.S. and around the world. Really? Trump gave a speech on January 6 as protesters turned violent at the U.S. Capitol about 2 miles away. Trump told supporters to go to the building but urged them to remain peaceful. After protesters breached the Capitol, he released videos asking them to leave and condemn the violence. And of course, Jack promptly removed that evidence, of course. Facebook didn't immediately respond to a request by the Epoch Times for comment. And of course, the social media company took a number of punitive actions against Trump in the lead up to the November 2020 election and ultimately banned him from its website, claiming he was condoning rather than condemning the actions of his supporters. Facebook appeared to take no action against Biden, even as a Democrat issued a number of misleading posts before and after the election. So, if there were no standards at all, well, it's all about the double standards, right? And so, last but not least on that, you can go to the federalregister.gov and find all of said executive orders and whatnot there. As of right now, 25 have landed. The other 10, 15, whatever, have not yet made it. If you go to the federalregister.gov Twitter sphere, you can find that there is no planned time on how long it actually takes from actual photo ops and media sightings and whatnot as he signs these things to the time they actually make their way to the Federal Register. So as of right now, prior to broadcast here, we're sitting at 25 that have actually landed at the Federal Register. You can see those under Executive Order 13985 through Executive Order 14009. And those you see right there. The Strengthening Medicaid and Affordable Care Act, Tackling the Climate Crisis at Home and Abroad, Council of Advisors on Science Technology, many of the same ones I just covered in the National Pulse article. So you can check those out there. All right, so, well, and along those lines, I guess, more to the story. Meet the U.S. workers who are devastated by Biden's climate executive orders in just a day. So obviously on day one, kill the Keystone Pipeline, and we just take out about 70,000 workers right off the giddy-up. So Newton's third law of motion tells us that, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. The new leader of the free world might have just proven Newton wrong. Hours after he received the greatest honor of his life, an adoring establishment media looked on as newly sworn-in President Joe Biden scribbled his name on an executive order revoking the permit for the Keystone XL pipeline. This simple act of applying pen to paper on Inauguration Day appears to have triggered a very unequal and opposite reaction. Immediately, thousands of workers lost their jobs. But the misery didn't end there. Oh no. Many workers, many Americans, are experiencing the ripple effects of this ill-considered action. The New York Post, Selena Zito, shared the story of Lori and Wally Cox, owners of the Stropel Hotel in Midland, South Dakota. Says, on the morning of January 20th, every room was filled with men and women who work on the Keystone XL pipeline. By 4 p.m., the entire place was cleared out, leaving the historic hotel silent for the first time since owners, Lori and Wally Cox, took it over 6 months ago, Zito wrote. Sitting in the now empty hotel, Lori Cox told Zito, we structured our prices to suit the per diems of each trade. We created a common room because there is a real sense of community within these workers, and we thrived since the day we opened our doors. Our whole world turned upside down, but with the stroke of a pen. As they spoke, Cox's husband was hours away looking for work as a millwright. She said the entire town became an instant ghost town on January 20th. David and Christina Dickerson, both of whom lost their jobs when Biden signed the Keystone XL pipeline order, told Steve Doocy, co-host of Fox and Friends, that they feel betrayed by the Biden administration. We've had to actually dip into our retirement and our 401k just trying to survive until something like this come up. We've been depending on this to happen, and it just all of a sudden got ripped out from under us, and we're not going to be able to do it now, David Dickerson said Wednesday. Christina Dickerson said 3 of their 4 children work in the oil and gas industry as well. Similar scenarios are playing out across America. Another EO Biden signed on day one placed a 60-day moratorium on new oil and natural gas leases and drilling permits on federal lands and waters. If this pause becomes permanent, it will devastate the economies of New Mexico and other oil-producing states. The AP reported January 22nd that top Republicans in the state, as well as local leaders in communities that border the Permian Basin, one of the most productive regions in the U.S., say any moves to make permanent the suspension would be economically devastating for the state. Half of New Mexico's production happens on federal land and amounts to hundreds of millions of dollars in royalties each year. The report said Biden's order would hit New Mexico especially hard because spending on education and other public programs hinges on the oil industry's success. Behind each of Biden's sweeping decrees are American people, workers who are losing their jobs, families who are now facing financial struggles, children whose parents no longer can afford to send them to college. This misery will lead some families to split up. Some will turn to alcohol and drugs. Others may choose suicide. But for Biden and those who worship at the altar of climate change, this is tremendous progress. America's economy is already reeling from government shutdowns related to the COVID-19 pandemic. And if the Biden administration had jobs available in energy-efficient industries into which displaced workers could immediately transition, it might be justified. Not really, in making these abrupt changes. But the truth is, very few jobs in clean energy are currently available, and they likely won't be for years. Moreover, workers would require some training or even a long period of training to qualify for the positions that are available. Most importantly, they would be earning less money. This administration appears to be winging it, with a complete disregard for the human costs of their actions. Biden and his team are making it up as they go along. In addition to turning people's lives upside down, they're killing the fossil fuel industry before they have a viable source of clean energy to replace it. Estimates of the percentage of America's energy needs that are met by fossil fuels vary widely. It's difficult to provide a definitive amount because each sector uses different amounts of a variety of energy sources. For instance, petroleum provides about 91% of the transportation sector's energy consumption, but less than 1% of the electric power sector's primary energy use, according to U.S. Energy Information Administration. However, I did find one constant: renewable, clean energy, which includes solar, wind, geothermal, hydroelectric, and biomass power, supplies between 11 and 19% of U.S. energy needs, depending on the sector. Clearly, the country is nowhere near ready to end our dependence on fossil fuels. And so, yeah, that's about enough of that. The bottom line is this. And even tonight, article out that says Panasonic is exiting the business of solar panels. Interesting. And, oh, by the way, think back to what happened when we had 44 in office with the whole Solyndra deal, right? What happened to Solyndra after they got the nice deal behind the scenes, had some federal money shoved their way? Oh, that's right. They promptly went belly up. And so it goes underneath Mr. Biden. All right. Well, that being said, we also get this. Still talking about Biden, says the Biden coronavirus spending bill is nothing but a financial payoff to the Democrat-controlled cities and states that rigged the election. So more of the same. Obviously, we know the whole $1.9 trillion that was being floated out there is probably not going to come anywhere close. And of course, where is the promise of the $2,000 checks? Where is it, Joe and Pelosi and company? Where is it? You ratcheted it down to $1,400, and now, is it going to happen? The Democratic Party has long used American taxpayers as a bank to finance schemes rewarding allies and favored groups. In fact, truth be told, there's probably a course on political patronage that every Democrat must secretly take and pass before becoming a party member in good standing. That has to be true because that is literally all the party does: pay off allies and friends and provide political cover while doing so. The so-called COVID-19 relief bill, now being pushed by President Joe Biden's handlers, is a classic example of this steal from the taxpayer to give to our friends scheme. In an interview with Fox News on Sunday, Senator Rick Scott out of Florida, a former governor of that state, backhanded Biden's $1.9 trillion relief measure as pointless. too expensive, and targeted at just about everything except coronavirus relief. In noting that the proposal is being put forth by Senator Bernie Sanders, the one lawmaker who should have the least allegiance to Democrats, but continually caucuses with them, anyway, even after screwing him out of 2 presidential nominations, Scott said it makes no sense, adding it's just a payback to the liberal left. Let's remember that this is all being led by Bernie Sanders, who's now the Democrat head of the Budget Committee, all right? That is all Bernie Sanders' idea of where we should go, Scott said. Republicans believe in targeted relief. Now, let's remember, just about a month ago, we committed almost over $1 trillion, and in the last 12 months, we've spent or committed $4.5 trillion. We have no idea how much of that money has not been spent, he continued, which in and of itself is problematic because someone, somewhere in government should know. And if they don't, then for certain no new relief should be passed until all that money can be accounted for. So, let's help people who have lost their jobs. Let's help our small businesses get open. Let's make sure we get this vaccine out. But this radical left agenda that is, not worrying about the fact that we have $27 trillion worth of debt and we're not living even close to within our means. I mean, this makes no sense. This is just payback to the liberal left, he continued. Says we need to work together to get something done. We need to help the people who have lost their jobs. We need to help our small businesses. We need to get our schools open. We need to get the vaccine out, he added. Now we've already given $100 billion to our schools, and in Florida, our schools are open. The CDC says schools can open now, so this idea that we have to spend, billions and billions and billions more, this is just a payback to the teachers' union and to broke Democrat-run states. Recall, last fall, ahead of the November elections, when Speaker Nancy Pelosi was railing at Republicans in the GOP-controlled Senate for failing to pass a massive new bill. That legislation was packed with hundreds of billions of dollars for blue states like Illinois and New York, whose left-wing leadership left gaping holes in budgets long overtaxed by massively generous and broke pensions to Democrat